Hey everybody! Today we're going to talk about Pet Shop and probably a little bit about Crisis if you haven't read Crisis. Um, Not much spoilery just because there's an overlap of characters for that book. So if you haven't read either the short story Pet Shop or Crisis and you want to click off now's a good time. Before I forget again, though, I had wanted to mention, and I'll put it in the comments this time and for the last video, for the Molly video. There is an anthology I really liked with medieval horror, actually, that kind of has the same vibe but darker. Um, I don't know anyone in it. I'm not friends with anyone in it. I just really enjoyed it, and I thought you would too. And that book is called Howls from the Dark Ages. It's actually really interesting and really cool. So if you've ever, you know, wanted something sort of Mask of Red Deathy feel for horror, it's a really good collection of stories. There's some that are, you know, scarier than others, but I thought the anthology was excellent. So anyway, that was for last time, and I forgot to mention it. This time, obviously, I'll be recommending Tales of the Apocalypse, which is the book that Shirley was in. Um, Not just because Shirley was in it, there's some really good books in there. There's also Tales of the Apocalypse 2, which is another collection of short stories about animals in the apocalypse. They're not all zombies, just so you know, obviously. They're just stories from the point of view of an animal during the apocalypse, and there's some really cool ones. And being in that anthology also obviously was why Shirley was created, but it's also why I picked a parrot instead of a dog or cat because I thought that she would um, stand out a little more than a dog or cat because I thought everybody in that anthology would probably do a dog or cat. I was wrong. There, I think, is one story in there about a cat, and one story about a dog, and all the other ones are not either one. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, so I think I overthunk it a little bit, but I'm really glad I did because Shirley is one of the characters I get the most questions and comments about, actually, which is really surprising to me for such a small, just because the story is such a short story, that she is one of the most talked about characters. So a few things about that story in general that I should probably admit to and get out of the way. When so the editor of that anthology, Chris Porto, he's a great science fiction writer on his own, but he was starting up this anthology in order to benefit a charity called Pets for Vets, which matches service animals to veterans who have PTSD or who need service animals to help with that or other medical issues. He approached me and just asked me to write a story, a post-apocalyptic story from the point of view of an animal. And at first, I didn't think I was going to connect it at all with After the Cure, just because the only animal really in that first series is Bernard's or Joe's dog. And I thought about writing that story, but again, because I knew that this was an anthology, I thought that everybody would be doing dogs or cats. So I thought another story about a dog was not going to be real interesting. So um, when I first started writing Pet Shop, Shirley and Princess the pig were the main characters, and they had nothing to do with After the Cure. But then I realized that it was a chance to tell a story that I would not have a chance to tell otherwise. Because by that time, I think that I had already written Povalia, so I don't think I'd written the 40th day yet, but I knew where the series was going, and I knew I wasn't going to get to tell the story of Bernard and how he became Bernard and how he lost his tongue. Um, and I knew that this like outlet could help me tell that story. But what I have to cop to is that the timeline, no matter how I justify it at this point, does not work out. There is no way that a pet shop in a mall was open long enough for these animals to survive, even assuming, the owner had pre-stocked them with a ton of food and water and had gotten sick very late. The mall was not going to stay open that long. So for them to survive until there was a cure and rumors of a cure for gray to find is not realistic. So I fully admit that. It was because I had not meant to connect them in the first place when I started writing the story. And today, if I rewrote it, I would do things much differently. I would probably start somewhere else and get to the pet shop, or have them escape the pet shop or something. I would have fixed the timeline. Obviously, I did not do that. So, that aside, um, one of the reasons that I chose a parrot and a pig originally were because of their intelligence level, and I knew that part of the idea of having an animal that wasn't a pet, that didn't have interaction with humans a lot, was going to be their intelligence level and understanding what was going on. If you took, say, a deer or a cow or something that wasn't in constant contact with humans, they might not notice the apocalypse at all, to be honest, or it just might be a good thing, which could be an interesting story, but wasn't like I was not telling that story. So, the reason I settled on Shirley was because I had read about Charles Dickens' Raven. Honestly, Charles Dickens had this raven that was extremely intelligent and like brought him things, and I think it imitated some of his, like it spoke a little bit. It was just very like remarkably intelligent. So I did research on the most intelligent birds, obviously, and African greys obviously are extremely long lived and extremely smart. And I thought that having a parrot that was very grumpy. So I have my neighbor growing up, my closest neighbor, we lived very rurally, but she had a bird sanctuary, and she had all kinds of exotic birds as well as rescues. And all of her more intelligent birds that I had been around had been kind of grumpy. And I think because, I was a stranger, I used to bird sit for her when she was a college professor too, so she would go away to do lecture tours or whatever, and I would bird sit for her. And I think the birds didn't like me because they weren't used to me, obviously. You know, they were fine. They were not animals that I found affection for. However, my dad had a cockatoo when I was growing up called Beaker, who was very affectionate. Anyhow, that's another story. But I made her grumpy and kind of this long term resident of this pet shop because I thought it would be a good development for her to actually have affection for a human at the end of the world. Like that she would actually see that somebody else was in trouble and something bad was happening, and she would try to save them, even though she's a bird. What can she do? African greys, granted, are big birds, but they're not, you know, dogs or horses or things with bulk that can really slow a person down. Let's see what else do I want to. The lemons. So she really likes lemons. Um, that was purely because of that bird sitting job that I had. Those birds really like citrus, and I don't know if that's a across the board thing or just the animals that I was taking care of at the time. That was their treat. Usually oranges, but one of them really liked limes, so I chose lemon for Surly Shirley. Um, as far as I guess we should talk about Bernard too. We'll talk about him in a little bit too, but um, so Joe Mackey, who became Bernard in Crisis, is like the through line from Gray's origin through the end. Basically, he becomes Bernard, but he's the one that told Gray about the ears, like the rumor about the ears. I also made him know the rumor about the cure. So he's conflicted, and that's another one where if I ever wrote another story in this area of the series, I probably would write from his point of view because I think it would be interesting to see how he went from being this, follower of Gray, like just going along to get along, to being somebody that stood up to him enough to basically endure torture to protect people. So that's another maybe in the future thing. Um, I guess that's it about Surly Shirley. A lot of people want to know if she made it. Um, at the end of the story, she ends up in the greenhouse with Bernard when Ruth and Juliana find him, and I would say that I think she probably did survive. I think she probably didn't fly again, but that maybe Bernard keeps her in the greenhouse, and maybe that's why he became a gardener there, is because she was there and he had to take care of her. So, if you're looking for a happy ending, that's probably as close as you're gonna get in this series, honestly. That maybe she's still hanging out with the fruit trees and Bernard and the dog. All right, so that's Surly Shirley. Tomorrow we're gonna talk about the asylum, and I will talk to you later.